Getting ready to do libation. Can everyone stand? It is an African custom that we ask the elders for permission to proceed. Anyone over 60? All I need is a yes. Do I have your permission to proceed? Yes. Thank you. It is an honor to be here. It's a special occasion. First, we honor the Most High, the one force, one source, called by many names. But in the end, when we shed our skin and we go back to one force, one source, the Most High, we give all honor, praise, and glory. Ashe. Next libation goes to the guardians of the four corners and the five elements. Ashe. Next libation goes to the transatlantic slave enslavement, where they crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Many people decided to jump in, and others were thrown in, and others were raped and mutilated. We have to give them honor. That is why we are here, because we are part of them. Ashe. Then goes to the Trail of Tears, the indigenous people of America that helped the Africans for their freedom and who also lost their lives. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Children of Soweto, we honor you also, and also all of the towns that were massacred and flattened, blocked, the people lost their homes and had to be displaced. Ashe. The civil rights martyrs and leaders, and those who also lost their lives, whether they were many colors, we honor them. Ashe, Ashe. Sir John Truth, Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, Emmett Till, Woodson Carter, we honor you. Ashe, Muhammad Ali, Maya Angelou, Tupac Shakur, Che Guevara, Dr. Sadie, Nipsey Hussle, we honor you. Nick Gregory, Marcus Messiah Garvey, Edward Evans, Frederick Douglass, Dr. Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, Grand Clinton, Queens of Antiquity, before everything was over in America. The leaders, the architects, the ones that had eyesight that they can see Sirius, the astrologers, the irrigators, we honor you. The kings and queens, Queen Makeda, Shaka Zulu, we honor you. The farmers and inventors, we honor you. Ashe. We honor special libation to the Shabazz family. Earl Little, Louise Little. A special honor to Malcolm Shabazz and Malik Shabazz. Special honor to Dr. Betty Shabazz. And a special tribute and honor to El-Hajj, Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X. We thank you for being a shining example of manhood, familyhood, fatherhood. We thank you for your tenacity, for your resilience, for your effort, for your energy, for your leadership, and for your unwavering revolutionary spirit. We honor you today. Ashe, Ashe. And to the babies born and yet to be born, to carry on the legacy. Ashe, 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 Ashe.
Ashe. Good evening. I'm Reverend Conrad B. Tillard, Sr., and I bring you greetings on behalf of my congregation from way out there in Brooklyn, Flatbush Tompkins Congregational Church. As we prepare now to move forward in this program, let us bow for a moment for a word of prayer. Eternal God, we call you by many names. We are an Abrahamic people, but we are also a people of traditional African religions. We are a people of antiquity. We are a people of transformative traditions all over the world. And yet, as we come this evening to honor Malcolm X, we recognize that he was a man of faith. And therefore, we come this evening calling upon the name that he called upon, looking to the power that helped him stand. Oh God, we are grateful that you loaned him to us. We're grateful that you let him come this way. We're grateful for the brain that you gave him. We're grateful for the family that nurtured him. We are grateful even for the conditions that set forth in motion this man that would have a transformative effect on so many of our lives and the world in which we live. We are grateful that we have the ability to listen to his analysis. We're grateful that he gave us an example of manhood. We're grateful, oh God, that you bless the fruit of his loins. We're grateful for his descendants, those that are here today, and the unborn generations that will continue to come forward. Oh God, he wanted unity for his people. We ask you to continue to nurture and bless us to find that unity. Oh God, he did not see us merely as so-called American Negroes. He did not see us as a localized people. As important as civil rights were, he understood that we were a human people and we were entitled to human rights. And so we urge and we ask that you give us the strength to continue to fight the important and necessary fight, the fight for human rights that far too many people are denied even today. Finally, oh God, as we have come today, we are so grateful that in spite of the confederation of forces that sought to silence his voice, some sought to silence his voice through and because of evil. Some sought to silence his voice because of misplaced anger. And yet some sought to silence his voice out of ignorance. But we're grateful for the tradition of resurrection. We're grateful that even in this sacred space on February the 21st, 1965, it was desecrated, but today it's consecrated. Oh God, we're grateful that those that sought to silence his voice, they failed, for still he speaks from eternity. As they sought to find his body, as they sought to see where he laid, when they got to the place where they thought he would be, the stones were rolled away, and still he speaks from eternity. Why do people look for him in the land of the dead when he lives? He lives in us. He lives in unborn generations. And most of all, he lives by your power, your mercy, and your grace. And so we thank you for this day. We thank you for his life. We accept his passing, but we glorify you for his resurrection. Still he speaks from eternity. In your name we pray. Amen.
Here, in this place, in this blessed, sacred space, where 57 years ago your life was taken in haste, was taken with hate, but Brother Malcolm May, no, you can't kill what God has purposed. If you bury seeds, they'll grow, and that's power. 3:10, yes, that was your final hour, but your life is still speaking, your words are still teaching, and though Black people still are bleeding, there are little signs of freedom. Self-determination is the reason that we keep on believing we're seeing. There's a worldwide revolution going on. Black folk are tired of being indicted before we're even born, being duped and scorned, Lord, for having skin of a darker hue. Got a campaign for our humanity as we're trying through, but still. Who taught us to love ourselves? You. Who took our plight and then who flew across the blue water so the world would know that the struggle is the same no matter where you go. From New York to the Congo, Mississippi to Belize, from Alabama, Kentucky, Kenya, it's the same. Please believe you declare. This is not just an American problem. And it's up to all Africans to band together to solve Brother Malcolm. We thank you for your sacrifice, because ain't too many out here who will give their lives for the truth. Despite bombings and the public bashings, you still lived a life of courage, integrity, and committed action, full of compassion, loving people, always staying in position, working overtime that we might see our condition. That was your mission. And there was no hate in your blood, just steadfast, unmovable, boundless love and self-reliance. No, we don't have to live in compliance with racism, sexism, oppression, all the violence against women. Brother Malcolm, you had something to say, because your own and many sisters back in the day. Speaking of sisters, at this time, I'd like to pay homage to Dr. Betty, who worked night and day to preserve your legacy in a dignified way. Is the very reason we have a simple today. I'm my sister, who raised your 6 daughters into queens, all the while becoming a doctor and was filling her dreams, turning tragedy to triumph. This press came to life. She said, find the good and praise it, and I know that's right. It's been 57 years and we still speak your name, Brother Malcolm, shining Black Prince, who was slain, that all the people in the place that you will never forget, say Ashe. It's been 57 years and we're gonna always speak your name, Brother Malcolm, El-Hajj, Malik, El-Shabazz, the Black shining Prince who was slain, that all the people in the place that you will never forget. Thank you.
That dynamic sister's name is She Salt. She wants you to know that's her name. We also want to thank Reverend Conrad Tillard for the beautiful prayer, Dr. Mother Koshali,
and the African Healing Circle for pouring the libations. Can we give them a round of applause? I am Cheryl Wills from Spectrum News, New York 1, and it's an honor to be here. We are here today, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, to remember our still Black shining prince. We are in a sacred space today. We are in a sacred space. Harlem is changing. Washington Heights is changing, but this space will never change. This will always the house that Malcolm and Betty built. Welcome, one and all, to the legacy 57th commemoration of El-Hajj, Malik, El-Shabazz, Malcolm X. Today we honor Brother Malcolm, his life's work and legacy in the same space where his life was taken 57 years ago. What was once a place of tragedy is now a place of triumph because of the vision of his loyal, beautiful, powerful wife, Dr. Betty Chabows. We honor her today. We honor her through her beautiful daughters. She kept the legacy alive, and now that's passed to her beautiful daughters. This program is in loving memory of Brother Malcolm, of Dr. Betty Shabazz, of Malcolm Latif Shabazz, and Malika Saban Shabazz. We are streaming live right now on YouTube channel, the Shabazz Center YouTube channel, and on WBAI 99.5 Pacifica Radio. We welcome all of you who are connecting with us digitally. COVID's not going to stop us from remembering Brother Malcolm. We went on pause and we went virtual, but now we are back, and we are so pleased to have Dr. Cornel West in the building with us right now. Before we hear from him, it is now my honor to introduce Ilyasa Shabazz, the third daughter of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. She is the co-chairperson of the Board of Trustees for the Shabazz Center, and she's an award-winning author, speaker, educator, producer, professor, and if I might make a personal note, she is a friend. On Instagram, any moment of the day, you will see her pride as she makes the world respect the legacy of her father. She won't let other people tell the story. She is telling the story. She is protecting the legacy, and it is absolutely my honor. Did you see her on my talk show yesterday? That sister spoke truth to power every second. I said, New York 1 can't handle this. I don't know if they're going to have me back tomorrow, but so far I'm going to go back tomorrow. But it's an honor to welcome. Please rest on your feet for this sister who is
Thank you very much. It's been one of those days, and we're so grateful to be here. We give praise to Allah, God, our Creator. To thee we beseech, and to thee we return. Today we remember our ancestors, our forefathers and foremothers, our brothers and sisters, Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. I am one of their 6 daughters. each of whom I love deeply: Atala, Kabila, Gamila, Malika, and Malik, and their grandchildren, Malcolm Latif, Malcolm Amjad, and Betty Bahia, whom I also love deeper than deep. It is an honor to be with you this evening as we continue the tradition begun by our mother. Betty Chabows was 30 years old when her home was firebombed. As she lay asleep with her husband on February 14th, and so my father stayed in the New York Hilton to keep the danger away from his young family. 1 week later, he invited his wife right here with their 4 babies. She was pregnant with my youngest sisters, the twins, when she witnessed the political assassination of her husband right here. But true to form, she turned a place that represented tragedy into a place of triumph. The Malcolm X Memorial Center was established to preserve her husband's work. Though she did not live long enough to witness its completion, her name and work are intimately interwoven with what we now call the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center. And this is the last place where I was with my mother on Mother's Day, and I'm just remembering, Auntie Mary read that you were with us. Do you want to wave? And my mother was responsible for ensuring that their key moments of my father's life was preserved on this wall, which was painted by Daniel Galvez, and that the statue downstairs, which is a bronze replica of my father, who was almost 6'5", that was done by Gabrielle Corinne. While there's not enough time today for me to enumerate my father's accomplishments, whether personal or professional, it is important for us to make time to honor with our memory, even if it means reclaiming the time that has been taken. El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz was an incredible man. As you know, he was a human rights advocate and also a loving father and husband. In the 1950s, when young people were marching, protesting, and demonstrating for quality education, quality health care, housing, basically respect for human life, my father came along and said, "We demand our human rights as your brother." He didn't ask. "We demand our human rights as ordained by God." He provided the biggest critique of America with his insistence that his country live up to its promise of liberty and justice for all its citizens. A human rights agenda was introduced to the civil rights movement, and he internationalized the struggle for Black, Indigenous people of color. If I could mention just 2 of the many values that define my father, it would include the value of truth in education and truth in one's character, knowledge and practice, wisdom and virtue. Such values in our nation are not being held in high esteem given the attacks on critical race theory. Brother Malcolm knew that when a country becomes deaf to the atrocities of history, it will become deaf to the voices of the oppressed. And that a country whose citizens lack the virtues of courage, honesty, and accountability will avoid truth and justice at all costs. This evening, we gather to honor the history and legacy of our ancestors truthfully. We gather to honor those priests and scholars who birthed thriving civilizations, those who were targeted, trafficked, and endured generational trauma in this education, those ancestors who toiled the soil and extended their sacrifices and contributions so that every single American citizen today has the opportunity to call this bustling nation, this land of milk and honey, their home. And that is because of our ancestors, and so we must participate in controlling the narrative of those stories. While Malcolm provided the biggest critique of America, he simply insisted that she live up to her promise of liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for the beautiful daughter. It runs in her blood to speak truth to power, you know? She got the gift, and no question about it, she got the gift. It's now my honor to welcome to the stage Candice Anderson. She's a gifted singer, songwriter, and actress from New Jersey, and for more than 20 years, she's performed with influential stage and recording artists, including Lauryn Hill, John Legend, Stephanie Mills, and Beyonce, just to name a few. Please welcome Candice Anderson.
Good evening. Good evening. The selection I'm going to play is inspired by Langston Hughes' poem titled I Dream a World. I think it embodies the life, the mission, the hope, the work, and also the sacrifice of Brother Malcolm. I dream of a world where men no other man is born, where love bless the earth and peace is path adorned, and I dream of a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where we no longer sets the soul, nor lies our day. Oh, world, I dream we're black or white, wherever race you be, we'll share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. Well, branches will hang his head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream I dream my world. Keep dreaming, yes, keep dreaming love and peace, unity and love, freedom, and joy like attends the needs of all mankind. Oh, attend
That's beautiful. So good evening. Thank you to Naja and Oyasa for inviting me to say a few words here, and for the efforts of so many of the people in this room here tonight who continue to work to honor and remember Malcolm's legacy and to increase our understanding of his influence and impact for the next generation. My name is Akemi Kochiyama. I'm a native of Harlem. I'm Yuri Kochiyama's granddaughter. I am the co-director of the Yuri Kochiyama Archives Project, and I'm a proud member of the board of trustees here at the Chabows Center. In the public consciousness, my grandmother, Yuri Kochiyama, and Malcolm X will forever be linked by the photograph that appeared in the March 5th, 1965 issue of Life magazine, which depicts Yuri cradling Malcolm's head moments after he was shot here in this room. To many, the photo is an odd juxtaposition and raises questions. Why was this woman here? While some might find it hard to imagine how a married, second-generation Japanese-American mother of 6 became a follower, student, and disciple of Malcolm X, an understanding of my grandmother's experience here in this country and where her personal and political beliefs and her passion for justice overlapped with Malcolm X makes it easier to comprehend. Yuri was born and raised in small-town Southern California. As a child of first-generation Japanese Americans, she enjoyed a relatively comfortable and normal American childhood and adolescence until her father, who was a successful commercial fisherman, was arrested by the FBI at the outset of World War II. Along with many other Japanese American community and business leaders residing in the West Coast at that time, my great-grandfather was unjustly accused of being a spy, and he was incarcerated as a prisoner of war immediately after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, like that day. Having no evidence to charge him, he was released a few weeks later, emaciated and unable to speak. He died the next day. A few weeks later, my grandmother's family was uprooted from their comfortable home and incarcerated, along with 120,000 Japanese American citizens, under President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, which was issued on February 19th, 1942. It was 80 years ago, about Saturday. Ironically, my grandparents met during World War II at an all-Japanese USO in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where my grandfather Bill, who was a native New Yorker, was training at Camp Shelby, a segregated army base for Black and Japanese soldiers getting ready to deploy to Europe. Although my grandparents would not fully comprehend the racist implications of Executive Order 9066 until years later, their experiences during the war significantly impacted and informed a new sense of themselves as people of color in America as they began to build family and community in post-World War II New York City. Upon moving into the Manhattanville projects in Harlem in 1960, my grandparents joined the Harlem Parents Committee, and they enrolled themselves and all 6 of their children in the Harlem Freedom Schools. Yuri's education and involvement in these organizations led her to participate in and support a wide range of community organizations, as well as African American, Asian American, and Third World movements for civil and human rights, for ethnic studies, and against the war in Vietnam. In 1963, Yuri met Malcolm X outside a courtroom hearing for civil rights demonstrators at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, what she would later refer to as her political awakening. His friendship and influence dramatically changed her life and her political perspective. She joined his group, the organization for Afro-American unity to work for racial and human rights. Through her lessons at the OAU's Liberation School here in Harlem and exchanges with Malcolm, Yuri's perspective became more radicalized and more international in scope, moving her to become passionately committed to Black nationalist struggles in Africa and in the United States, to supporting Puerto Rican struggles for independence, to solidarity with Cuba, and countless other international liberation struggles. On June 1964, Malcolm visited my grandparents' home in the Manhattanville Projects on West 126th Street, upon their invitation to meet with 3 writers from the Hiroshima-Nagasaki Peace Study Mission. These writers were on a world tour speaking against the proliferation of nuclear arms building. They were also hibakusha, atomic bomb survivors, and they wanted to meet Malcolm X more than any other person in America. They asked Yuri to request a meeting with him. My grandparents' crowded apartment was packed to capacity with an international assembly of activists, artists, journalists, friends, and neighbors when Malcolm arrived that night. Gracious and warm to everyone who approached him, Yuri said you could hear a pin drop when Malcolm began to speak. He talked about his time in prison, about the history of colonialism in Asia and in Africa, about the People's Republic of China and his admiration for Mao Zedong. And then he spoke about Vietnam. As Yuri recalled, one of the most memorable and important things he said that night was about Vietnam and the implications of American involvement there. He said, if America sends troops to Vietnam, you progressives should protest. The struggle of Vietnam is the struggle of the whole third world, the struggle against colonialism, neocolonialism, and imperialism. A few months later, Malcolm embarked on Hajj to Mecca. He sent my grandparents 11 postcards from 9 countries over the course of that journey. My favorite one is from Kuwait. It reads, still trying to travel and broaden my scope since I've learned what a mess can be made by narrow-minded people. Though she had only known Malcolm for 18 months by the time of his death, his friendship, his discipline, example, and political guidance had a profound influence on my grandmother, transforming her from a liberal civil rights activist to an international revolutionary anti-imperialist. I know if my grandmother were here today, she would be telling us to keep fighting against racism, sexism, and the capitalist forces that divide, exploit, and oppress BIPOC communities. She would be connecting these issues to continued state-sanctioned violence domestically and aggressive U.S. foreign policy toward people of color globally, and the rights of all human beings to dignity, respect, and self-determination. She would be excited to see BIPOC communities and organizations coming together to work for justice for all, and she would be telling us to read and to remember Malcolm. Thank you.
Our beautiful sister said, if my grandmother was here today, I have news for you. Your grandmother's spirit is here today. She is so pleased that you speak her name with such reverence. It is so important that these revolutionaries are never forgotten and that their children tell the story above all else. You write the first line of her legacy. I got chills. I don't know about you. I didn't know that chapter of Malcolm's life, and your amazing grandmother. Thank you for illuminating us. That was beautiful. One more round of applause. It is now my honor to present the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Chabows Scholarship Fund. And we have an extraordinary young man today who is the recipient. In honor of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz' legacy as social movement leaders and trailblazing educators, the Chabows Center has partnered with Scholly to offer 3 students funding toward their college degree. Today, we are happy to welcome Jason Pantarata to the stage. of Honor was a proud student at Howard University, HU. And he is a proud recipient of this award. Please welcome him.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to have been selected as one of the 3 recipients of the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Scholarship, and to be an inaugural intern with the Shabazz Center. I'd like to thank the Shabazz Center, Ms. Ilyasa Shabazz, Mr. Christopher Gray and Scali for awarding me this incredible opportunity, and also Ms. Mary Lawson, who referred this scholarship to me. Brother El-Hajj, Malik, El-Shabazz, Brother Malcolm X was truly inspirational in my journey to the point I'm at now as a Howard University senior studying journalism and Afro-American studies. I always had an incredible passion toward racial justice and a love of African-American history and culture. This is thanks to my mother, who always made sure to expose me and my brothers to the critical knowledge of Black history and lessons to carry with us as young Black men in this society. Speaking of which, my mother often tells a story of how when I was about 6 or 7, I asked about wearing yo-yo pants, which were baggy pants. And she made sure to tell me, she made sure to let me know about the story of Abdou Diallo, who was killed by the police because of their racist profiling. After hearing this, my only concern as a 6 or 7-year-old was not why I couldn't wear my clothes that way, but instead I asked what happened to those police officers. My upbringing with my African-American mother and my Italian-American father, who always stressed a sense of morality, has afforded me a more advanced perspective on the issues and the struggle that we all face going forward. The importance of family, education, spirituality, and natural God-given gifts have been instilled in me through the legacies of my grandfathers, Marion Taylor and Italo Ponterado. Since I was old enough to begin my own personal exploration and dive into Black history, Malcolm X had been one of my greatest inspirations. Watching his videos and later reading the autobiography from cover to cover made Brother Malcolm X one of the most important forces in my development. Harlem has been an important part of the foundation in building my education of African-American history. Of course, it is also the center where Brother Malcolm grew his influence in reaching and empowering the Black community at large. I'll never forget the first time I had the honor of stepping into the Shabazz Center. It was the annual birthday celebration of Brother Malcolm in 2019. And it was an incredible ceremony, an experience I'll always treasure. Listening to all the incredible speeches and the incredible performances similar to tonight. So to now be standing here at this event and having followed Miss Akemi Kochiyama, the granddaughter of the great Yuri Kochiyama, is truly a blessing. Yuri Kochiyama is someone who I only recently discovered just a few days ago as I was watching an edition of In Class with Dr. Greg Carr, which is a YouTube show. Dr. Carr, of course, is the head of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. And he went extensively explaining the incredible legacy of Miss Yuri Kochiyama. Of course, it is an honor to have followed me, Dr. Cornell West, one of the brilliant minds of our time, who I followed for many years. Shortly after completing the autobiography, I read Race Matters by Dr. West, cover to cover as well. Brother Malcolm laid bare the oppression of our people and put the white supremacy power structure on trial in such an eloquent and unequivocal way. For many Black folks like myself and beyond, across generations, young and old, in the United States and globally, he was one of the first figures to ignite that fire for fighting for our liberation. I have had the distinct pleasure of building a relationship with one of Brother Malcolm's close confidants, one of his lieutenants in the Organization of Afro-American Unity, Professor A. Peter Bailey, who ran the OAAU newsletter. Professor Bailey has stated that Brother Malcolm had that same impact on his life. I was connected with Professor Bailey through my dear mentor, Mr. Ron Scott, last fall. Professor Bailey and I met last week ahead of this event tonight. We spent most of the day together. We walked across the Howard University campus. We had great discussions, and the reading material that he provided me of things that he has written about Brother Malcolm, things Malcolm was quoted as having said, were remarkable to read. In one of the pieces, Celebrate Brother Malcolm with Positive Action, Professor Bailey talks about, he quotes Malcolm, in which he was calling for a guardian system for young Black men and women whenever they are in trouble to come to older folks in the community and receive help. Brother Malcolm had an undying commitment to our people and spoke on the importance of Black institutions. Despite what narrative that certain people might like to shape about Brother Malcolm previous to his pilgrimage to Mecca and afterwards, he was always clear politically about the reality here in the United States and what it meant to be Black in this country and what needed to be done. He was always clear and consistent about that. That is why he was dedicated toward Pan-Africanism, and similar to Brother Dr. Martin Luther King, the power structure could not handle everything he was doing and achieving because they knew it would be the end of their system. In closing, I would just like to say Brother Malcolm also knew the importance of Black media and telling our own stories, which is why he had the OA newsletter. The legacy of the Black press and true Black journalism was about educating and informing our people and demanding justice. That is why we must continue to uphold the legacy of the Black press and Black media and holding the right people accountable. As Malcolm said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. This is a part of the critical work that I'm pursuing as a Black journalist that I'm dedicated toward and will continue in the legacy of Brother Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. Thank you so much.
Good evening. How y'all doing? My name is Naja Zigby Johnson, and I am honored to serve as the Director of Institutional Advancement here at the Chabows Center. We are a cultural and educational institution that harnesses the legacies of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz to incubate social, racial, and global justice movements. Our physical space memorializes Malcolm X's humanitarian efforts and martyrdom and embodies the educational vision of Dr. Betty Shabazz. We partner with community organizers and educators and facilitate cultural activations meant to catalyze the next generation of leaders in the movement for global racial equity and justice. At a very personal level, I'm standing here in this moment because I am my parents' Kolu and Darren's daughter, and Harlem has always been my home. You are my community and the reason I do this work. I love Black people more than anything in this world, and I believe with every fiber in me that it is our God-given mandate to be free and whole, to breathe easy, and to live and love without limits. So naturally or unnaturally, I found myself at Harvard Divinity School, where I studied Black American social movement history, philosophy, and our expansive religious and cultural practices that point toward new cosmological orders and ways of being. Like so many young people thirsting for truth and meaning as we navigate these complex, painful, and beautiful lives under the entangled web of capitalism and white supremacy, I was instantly drawn to the people's professor and prophet, Dr. Cornel West. On my very first day at Harvard, I walked into Boylston Hall and took a second row seat for his class, The Historical Philosophies of W.E.B. Du Bois. Dr. West walked in with that Tulsa, Oklahoma swagger and held equally an air of pious humility that can only be possessed by a human who has committed themselves fully to the cause of liberation. That day, Dr. West spoke about the concepts of paideia and kenosis and a commitment to Black love. Dr. West explained to us that you have to learn how to die in order to learn how to love. And isn't that exactly what Brother Malcolm did for us? Dr. West explained kenosis not simply as a form of death, but in the deepest sense of the word as a spiritual emptying of oneself. Quite like I imagine Malcolm did right here as he stood where the old Audubon Ballroom stage used to be and shared his prophetic message with the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which would be his last political project before his death. Malcolm lived a short but prolific life. He gave us everything, and his politics evolved publicly. He was not above growth or reproach. Malcolm set a new standard for embodied morality, and in order to fully appreciate the depth of his commitment, we must sit with this notion of kenosis, of emptying oneself, of dying, and of truly honoring life as intrinsically magnificent. Because the reality is that so many of those in power don't really seem to understand what it means to be alive. That to be in touch with our corporal and spiritual selves, our guttural humanness, means that we must first recognize the humanity of others, and that it's intrinsically linked with our own. White supremacy doesn't allow for this, so I tend to think that those under its influence don't even know what it means to be in touch with their own aliveness, or their breath in those delicate ways that Black folks don't get to take for granted because we know what it means to get it stolen from us. Malcolm X and Dr. Cornel West have taught me how to live and love and how to die. There is so much to say about the people's professor and so many flowers to be given while he lives and walks amongst us. Dr. West has written over 20 books from Race Matters to Black Prophetic Fire and has edited at least 13 more. Dr. West has produced 3 spoken word albums, all a reflection of his love for the Black American musical tradition, which has best conveyed the depth of feeling wrapped up in our spectacular and complicated existence. A graduate of Harvard and Princeton, Dr. West has taught at both universities and now holds the title of the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Professor of Philosophy and Christian Practice at Union Theological Seminary and Professor Emeritus at Princeton University. It is our honor to live in the same time as Dr. West and to learn from his brilliance, which is a reflection of his parents, Irene and Clifton West, of his precious children, of his family and teachers, and of his faithfulness to truth, justice, and love. As Dr. West will surely remind us, it is our responsibility to heed the charge to build and sustain a future that demands our full humanity and nothing less. Because anything short of this would be an affront to our ancestors who were forced to pretend but never believed that they were less than human. So in this spirit, let us welcome Dr. Cornel West, one of the greatest love warriors, truth tellers, peacemakers, and soul stirrers. May the legacy of Brother Malcolm forever animate your life.
Listen, there is a sweet spirit in this place. Do you feel it? I want to go and see my common sister and the other. Oh, yes. We are who we are because somebody loved us. Somebody cared for us. Somebody attended to us.
Yes, Bob.
And the blood spilled. The life lived. The vision of Brother Malcolm and Sister Betty in this consecrated space means that we say we shall never forget them. Their love is as concrete as a heart attack. They're the White Rock Baptist Church right around the corner here in Harlem that produced the Ashford and Simpson that wrote a song called Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing.
Come on, teach, Bob.
Malcolm was the real thing. Wasn't nothing fake about it. Nothing phony about it. Nothing fraudulent about it. He said what it meant, and it meant what it said, and he was willing to live and die for what it said. Even if he changed his mind, you knew what nothing superficial. He didn't sanitize his language. He didn't sterilize his language. He didn't deodorize his language. He kept it funky. On the 125th Street, and the last moment of his life, and then 5 days before he died in Rochester, what did he say? He said there's a 400-year war against black people in the New World, and it's connected to the war in Vietnam, it's connected to the war in the Congo, it's connected to predatory capitalist processes that have imperial effects, it's connected to the patriarchy. Any ideology that loses sight of the humanity of people. That's the Malcolm and Betty that we have come to celebrate and memorialize. But let us be clear, let us never forget. Malcolm and Betty are mighty waves in an ocean of a tradition of a great people. Extensions of a great people. Spiritual and cultural properties of a great people. There's no other people in the modern world who have been so chronically hated and systemically loathed like black people, but we keep giving out love warriors that will kill them. I'm coming so to the truth. Very imperative. Here comes Marcus Garvey. Here comes A. Philip Randolph. Here comes Anna Julia Cooper. Here comes Anna B. Wells Barnett. Here comes Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday. Here comes John Coltrane and Miles Davis. Oh, I'm seeing my brother on the horn. Kevin Brown! Yes, all of these are waves in the ocean. You all are waves in that ocean. The last thing Brother Malcolm and Sister Betty want us to do is put them on some kind of pedestal with isolated individuals that's not part of our tradition, our community, our history, our heritage. They represent the best of who we are. They set the spiritual standard, the moral standard, and they remind us always begin precisely where we began with the libation. The acknowledgement of those who came before, and then the younger generation, the young Jason, and Naja, and the others, keeping that caravan of love that the Isley brothers sing about. The love train of the OJ. The people getting ready train of a genius from the west side of Chicago named Curtis Mayfield. That's the tradition that we're talking about. And in the face of all of that hatred, 400 years, teaching the world so much about love, how to love, what love can do. It's not just the love supreme in the abstract, but it's on the ground. The love that Louise, Helen, Norton, Little, and Earl Little had for Malcolm. The love of Sister Betsy, of El-Shabazz, the love in your lives, and yes, Sister Naja, the love of Irene B. West and Clifton West, and Cynthia and Cheryl and Clifton, my family. There used to be a brother in my church every fifth Sunday. He'd show up playing the organ named Sylvester, which is known as a genius that he is, named Sly Stone. And he wrote a song called Family Affair. It's a family affair, but the love is focused on everyday people. Ordinary people. Never in the history, not just of black people, not just of America, of the modern world, has has there been such a love warrior with overwhelming courage to allow his love to be manifest such that he's willing to pay any cost, bear any burden. Even when the black folk themselves didn't love him, he said, that's all right, you're still worthy of love. I'm going to tell the truth about your suffering. I'm going to tell the truth about why you're in hell. I'm not in it for popularity. I'm in it for an integrity such that when they take me, I would have borne a witness such that maybe 57 years later, some folk can still remember what we were trying to do, keeping track of our love, keeping track of our vision, and most importantly, keeping track of our courage. Because there hasn't been a people in the modern world who have been terrorized like black people, day in and day out. Institutions and structures, individuals and persons, and we keep dishing out what? Freedom fighters. The trauma of 400 years, and keep dishing out wounded healers on every level. That's why I made my way to the drums. Where would black folk be without the drums? No, I would have snapped long time ago. I might snap any minute anywhere. A black man in America trying to preserve my sanity and dignity in the face of all of this organized greed and institutionalized hatred. But Malcolm X, Sister Betty, they specialized in deniggerizing black people. They specialized in it. Malcolm X deniggerized more black people than any other black spokesman in the history of the modern world. What do you mean deniggerized, Brother Wallace? I mean, you take a dignified African people with a rich history, a profound connection going all the way back to the first people, and try to convince them they're less beautiful and they're less moral and they're less intelligent, and try to convince them that they ought to walk around scared all the time and laughing when it ain't funny and scratching when it don't itch and wearing the mask so they can negotiate and navigate in the white normative gaze on a terrain that's circumscribed by white supremacy. Niggerize the people. Keep them so afraid, intimidated. And Malcolm, Betty, they have a lesson for us here in 2022. Echo the 10th chapter of Matthew. Now, I'm a revolutionary Christian, so I love my Muslim brothers and sisters. In fact, I just want to add a footnote. Malcolm and Betty, Christian shaped, chose to be Muslims. And the freest of all black people has been a Muslim named Malcolm X, and a Muslim named Muhammad Ali, and a Muslim named Rakim. He's the John Coltrane of hip hop, but we won't get into arguments today. And there's no John Coltrane without Naima. She was a Muslim too. Just like there's no John Coltrane without Alice. She's Hindu. But I just add this to let us recognize, no matter how Christian I am, a Muslim they are, a Buddhist bell hooks is, or agnostic is the boys, or atheistic, as some of our revolutionary secular brothers and sisters, we still part of the same people, the same traditions, if we're willing to break the back of fear and quit being so afraid and intimidated. Malcolm X, Sister Betty, was fearless, uncompromising, unintimidated, willing to cut radically against the grain because they were not in it for their own personal gain. They were in it because they were willing to sacrifice. That kenosis is like the end of a James Brown concert where he would go for 3.5 hours non-stop and always end the concert just like he did right down the street here in Apollo. I'm an extension of you, you an extension of me. I don't exist without you, and I thank God you don't exist without me no more. Did anybody come here to hear a song that we didn't play? You didn't play Soul Power. Hit it, Bootsy. We're going to play that song for that sister. We came here to serve. We came here to empower. We came here to enable folk. We didn't come here to be no spectacle. Saw that at halftime the other day in the Super Bowl. Can you imagine if Nina Simone was up there? Can you imagine if Gil Scott-Heron was up there? Can you imagine if Curtis Mayfield was up there? Can you imagine if Chuck D was up there? Black entertainers, just like the black bourgeoisie, more and more, just in it for spectacle. Peacock, peacock, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Peacocks can't. Peacocks struck because they can't fly. I come from a people who fly like eagles. We are in this for spectacle. Malcolm was never a peacock. Betty was never a peacock. They were in it for service. And what does the eagle do? C.L. Franklin, the genius who gave birth to a genius named Aretha Franklin, said the eagle flies his nest. Fly high in order to look low, in order to be in solidarity with folk who are catching hell. And what does that mean? It means, and Malcolm was always so clear about this, and let us be very honest, Malcolm was not the most popular black brother or leader in his day. Everybody now want to run around and act like somehow they were in deep solidarity. Quit lying, get off the symbolic crap pipe and be honest. You were afraid of Malcolm. How come? Because the truth was too much. Got too deep. Pull the rug from under you. That's what Malcolm did. Yes, sir. And I know he deniggerized me. I got some deniggerizing in the Charlotte Baptist Church, but Malcolm took it to a level I knew not of. I came back, I was so free. I'm so ready to take on whatever the world got to offer. Why? Because the only thing that breaks the back of fear is love. And when you really love folk, you hate the fact they're being treated unjustly. When you really love folk, you loathe the fact they're being treated unfairly. And if you don't say something, the rocks are going to shout out. That's what was coming through. And the only way you do that is to allow the best of your family, your tradition, your history to come through you. Malcolm, Garvey, father and mother, already got a jump start in life. Garvey saying, up, you mighty race, you can do what you will. The world has made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue. Garvey understood that black love is always a crime in a white supremacist world. Anybody who falls in love with black people will be criminalized, assassinated, murdered, misunderstood, misconstrued, marginalized, lied on, rebuked, and scorned, and yet we just keep coming anyway. That's the kind of people we are. That's what our young people need to understand. So when you get in front of the world, act like Thomas Smith and John Carlos, act like Muhammad Ali, act like Althea Gilson, straighten your backs up and speak of truth. And the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. And if no suffering is speaking, then you rest assured you're lying. They say, oh, Brother West, the price of the truth is so heavy, the price of living a lie is even heavier, and your children are going to have to pay the cost if you don't straighten your back. So, Brother Mark used to say, anytime, every day people say, is that Brother Chester? Oh, give it up for my dear Brother Chester. He's one of the freedom fighters I'm talking about. He's one of the freedom fighters I'm talking about right there. So, that's actually right, but Brother Martin used to say what? Anytime ordinary people straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere because folk can't ride your back unless it's big.
That's right.
Malcolm straightened his back up in the name of love, in the name of freedom, in the name of the best of our history and organizing and mobilizing and learning from the vanguard. And I'm going to end on the vanguard because the vanguard of Black people, Malcolm understood it. There's a wonderful moment on the wall here where you see younger Malcolm dancing. And that's this crucial moment in the autobiography, y'all remember, when he's dancing and Duke Ellington sees him dancing and he just bows to Malcolm. Can you imagine what a moment? Duke Ellington bowing to Malcolm Little. That's like Sarah Vaughan bowing to Count Basie. It's too deep. We don't have a language for it. But the musicians, Malcolm and Betty always understood this. They set the standard for Black people. Because for the most part, all of us have been so niggerized in our own ways, so obsessed with the white normative gaze and what the white establishment thinks and trying to get approval from the mainstream and the streamline. You can't be free like that. But our musicians at their best, they don't have to worry about what's going on the vanilla side of town because they know they have such a rich and profound tradition that they can bounce back on and build on and therefore be so free, so open, affirming their humanity without having to prove it to anybody, refusing to be in a perpetual audition for the white mainstream. Just be free all yourself. That's in part what's going on when you hear these drums. This is not entertainment. This is the struggle of a people. It's the sonic expression of the struggle of a people at the highest level of love and freedom and courage and vision. And that's what Malcolm was always enacting. There was a musicality in his freedom on television, on the radio, on the corner. He was a musician of words. He was a dance man. Betty was a blues woman. Can't say nothing deeper than that because that means you got something that the world didn't give you and the world can't take away in terms of vanilla side. It's hard. And they can put you in prison like Mumi Abu-Jamal. Where's my brother who just got out of prison 6 Stand up, my brothers. Let's stand up, my brother. This brother was a man. You give it up for my brother. Let's go. 6 years ago, strong enough, full of vision, full of magnanimity. And on the inside, he had that dignity. Is that right, my brother? You held on to it. Rooted in the best of your tradition. That's what we've come to celebrate. So don't make it just the incredible Malcolm or the inimitable Betty. No, this is about us in relation to him who's the best. God bless you, be with you.
If you ever wondered why they call him the people's professor, now we know. That was about the most moving tribute to Brother Malcolm I've ever heard in my life. I don't know about you, but if Malcolm was our Black shining prince, meet our shining Black scholar. Before we go to our next guest, who's going to take the podium. I want to acknowledge the parents of our scholarship recipient. You know, our students can't get there by themselves. They need someone, a parent, a guardian, to help them get there. And we want to honor Jason's parents. Would you stand and be recognized? They made a great son. Thank you for raising an outstanding young man. We're now pleased to welcome Dr. Pharaoh Jasmine Griffin to the stage. Dr. Pharaoh is an inaugural chair of the African American and African Diaspora Studies Department at Columbia University, where she also serves as the William B. Ransford Professor of English and Comparative Literature. Professor Griffin received her BA from Harvard, her PhD in American Studies from Yale. She is the author of 8 books. Her most recent, Read Until You Understand. I love that title. Read Until You Understand the Profound Wisdom of Black Life and Literature. Please welcome Dr. Griffin.
I was a student of Cornell West, and one thing I learned that's not going to happen tonight is you never follow him. So, good evening, everyone. I am so honored to offer a few remarks about Brother Malcolm and jazz to introduce this evening's artists. In my childhood home, there were few people or things spoken of with greater reverence than was Malcolm X and the music we call jazz. Both were presented to me by parents as representatives of the height of our people's genius and truth, both having expressed our suffering, but also articulating our aspirations and embodying our beauty and our brilliance. I've often thought about my parents' generation because it was a generation that gave us both Malcolm and Martin, Miles in Train, Sonny Stitt, Dinah Washington, and the divine one, Sarah Vaughan. What a generation, right? Malcolm was a lover of our music. He was a participant in the Black music culture of his day, known to and befriended by many musicians. He considered Dinah Washington my ace girl, as well as Lionel Hampton's trombonist, Al Hayes, whom he referred to as my ace. In the autobiography, you might recall that he talks about his friendships with Billie Holiday, Lester Young, Ray Nance, Don Byas, Cootie Williams, the best artists of their time. He recalls going to see Billie Holiday on 52nd Street at the Onyx Club. Those of you who know the autobiography will remember this. He says that once her set was done, she came over to our table, and then he remembers, that was the last time I ever saw Lady Day. He said, she's dead. Dope and heartbreak stopped that heart as big as a barn, and that sound and style that no one successfully copies. Lady Day, he said, sang with the soul of Negroes from centuries of sorrow and oppression. What a shame that proud, fine Black woman never lived where the true greatness of the Black race was appreciated. Profound words about Lady Day. Malcolm, though, was not only a fan, he was an interpreter. He was a knowledgeable listener who could hear the meaning expressed in the sound. He could hear the deeper frequencies. Even after his conversion to Islam, he continued to remember his friends and his love for the music with warmth and affection. And although he would eventually leave the world that he shared with Lady Day, the world of the Black nightlife, he never abandoned his love for the music and the musicians and his deep understanding and appreciation for their significance. In a letter dated March 9th, 1950, written while he was in prison, he wrote, "Music, my brother, is ours. It is us. And like us, it is always here, surrounding us like the infinite particles that make up life. It cannot be seen, but can only be felt like life. No, it is not created, but like the never-dying soul, eternally permeates the atmosphere with its presence, ever waiting for its master, the lordly musician, the wielder of souls, to come and give it a temple, molded into a song. Music without the musician is like life without Allah, both being in need of a house, a home, the temple, the complete song, and its creator. Here we have Malcolm, the spiritual leader and music theorist, explaining the deep spirituality of the music as a universal divine gift, and the musician as the living vessel, the vehicle, who practiced the work of communicating that gift from the divine. It is always already there. It is always ours to shape and to mold and guide our perception of ourselves and the world. As late as 1964, he noted that music is, quote, the only area on the American scene where the Black man has been free to create and he has mastered it. Is it any wonder that generations of musicians and poets have offered their gratitude to Malcolm through their own artistry? So how fitting that tonight we commemorate the living legacy of El-Hajj, Malik, El-Shabazz, Malcolm X. We do so not only in word, but also with music and ultimately with action. I am honored to introduce this evening's artists, Keon Harold and Brandy Younger, both of whom are the living legacy of the music that Malcolm so loved. A native of Ferguson, Missouri, Keon Harold has famously been called the future of the trumpet by none other than Wynton Marsalis. After tonight, you'll say he's the president of the trumpet too. He is an inventive, multidisciplinary, genre-fluid artist, trumpeter, vocalist, composer, arranger, platinum music producer, band leader. He has toured or recorded with artists as diverse as Jay-Z, Nas, Keith Richards. He has collaborated with Robert Glasper, Maxwell, Common, and Gregory Porter. And if you saw Don Cheadle's film about Miles Ahead, then you've already heard Keon on trumpet. He is currently the new artistic advisor for St. Louis, Jazz St. Louis, and he is also an activist for social justice. Of his music, Keon has said, sometimes folk can't speak for themselves, so as humbly and as honestly as I can, I try to speak for those people with my music. His most recent recording is The Musician. Tonight, he is joined by Grammy-nominated harpist, my dear friend and sister, Brandy Younger. Brandy has performed with such legends as Pharaoh Saunders, Jack DeJohnette, Charlie Hayden, Lauryn Hill, John Legend, Common, Drake, and The Roots. But she also leads her own ensemble and you can find her own recordings. Her composition, Beautiful is Black, has been nominated as the best instrumental composition for this year's Grammy. So please, let us welcome Keon Harold and Brandy Younger.
Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? It's a pleasure to be here. This is super low, but it is what it is. Oh, it's gone. I'm gonna play it. It's cool. The next song we're gonna play is one that I wrote. I'm from Ferguson. And the kid was killed in Ferguson, named Mike Brown, if anybody knows that name. I wrote this song in reverence of his family, of him, and of all of the people who've been taken before their time, in their time, but left a legacy to us. And Malcolm is no short of that. So I want to dedicate this song, In Be Lament, to the spirit of Malcolm, to the spirit of hope, to the spirit of justice, and to the spirit of change.
Yes, sir.
What a way to end our tribute to Malcolm with the Grammy Award-winning Keon Harold and Grammy nominee. Before we close out and I bring on the Imam for the closing prayer, I just want to acknowledge this beautiful center one last time. Don't take it for granted. Blood, sweat, and tears went into making this center happen, and we need your support. It doesn't happen by magic. We need your support to keep the lights on, to keep the programming coming. Please, the website is on the back of your program. An amount of any donation is welcome. We want to again acknowledge all of the beautiful daughters of Brother Malcolm and Sister Betty for keeping their legacy alive. We also thank you. We want to acknowledge the grandchildren, the entire Shabazz family, and all of the speakers. Dr. Cornell West brought the fire. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And one quick announcement. So many of you know me from New York One, and I guess I'm known as a journalist, but my true identity is that of the great-great-great-granddaughter of an enslaved African who fought in the Civil War. He ran away from a plantation in 1863 and fought for a country that despised him to help them break the chains of slavery. He is buried in an unmarked grave, and I'm on my way to
find him, more on that the next time I see you. But what I'm doing right now, in the spirit of Brother Malcolm, because Brother Malcolm taught us to never forget our legacy. Dr. West brought that out so beautifully, to never forget our legacy. So I'm happy to announce, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that a Congressional Gold Medal is in the works for the 206,000 Black men who helped free this country of slavery. They are the proud members of the United States Colored Troops, and they have passed away a long time ago, but we, the descendants, will never let you forget what they did for this country. So with that, I'll let you know when the gold medal ceremony happens, but until then, keep us all in prayer, keep the Chabows family in your prayers, because we will never let this world forget that Malcolm and Betty lived. To close us out in prayer, we have Imam Dr. Omar Suleiman, a world-renowned scholar and theologically driven activist for human rights. He is founder and president of the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research and adjunct professor of Islamic. Oh, but first, this beautiful gentleman right here. My brother, would you come? Yes. Okay. I got all excited talking about the United States Colored Troops. Forgive me. Philip Agnew, come to this stage, my brother. We see you there. He is going to give the closing call to action. He is the co-founder and organizer of Black Men Build and Dream Defenders. Welcome to this powerful brother.
I'll get out of your way. I know we have a great event this evening afterwards. All peace to the people. Love to the people. Freedom to the people. All power to the people. Now we can do better than that. All love to the people. Peace to the people. Freedom to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening to friends, to some family, to some comrades, and as Brother Malcolm would say, good evening to some of our enemies.
Teach on.
We know they're in here. Maybe not here, but on the stream. I want to thank Naja. I want to thank Ms. Shabazz for the distinction of addressing you all this evening and for the opportunity to serve on the board for this incredible organization. I've expressed to them personally, and now I count it a privilege to express to you all this evening the great honor of my life has been to serve in some small part in protecting the legacy of Malcolm and Betty Shabazz. I have been tasked this evening with closing, with wrapping up all the power and joy and celebration of this memorial into a few minutes, and sending you back into the world with a charge fit for this occasion and this moment we find ourselves in. I, like many of you, have loved Malcolm for many years. I remember reading his autobiography as a child. I read it over and over, picturing the words, living the moments in my mind's eye, imagining moving in the world as he did, with his discipline, with his commitment, with his love for his family, his love for our people. Malcolm, I'm not ashamed to admit, was a god to me. I wanted to be tall like him. I wanted to be red like him. I wanted to be black like him. I wanted to be inmate like him, be converted like him, be Muslim like him, be nation like him, be world traveler like him, be learner like him, be speaker like him, be teacher like him. I wanted to be feared like him. I wanted to be him. As a man, he became human to me, and I loved him even more. I changed names like him. I went to one and then I went back to home base. I doubted myself like him. I wondered like him. I wandered like him. I feared like him. I rebelled like him. I transformed like him. His life and his story seeped into my spirits, my words, my stories, my being. There were whole passages that I committed to memory, whole parts of his life that still guide my movements, whole speeches that I memorized and copied. Then there was what we all forget, Dr. Betty Shabazz. Every wait for a call, every weight on her heart, every threat, every burden laid on her shoulders, she is there, seen and unseen, making the most important chapters of Malcolm's life and memory possible. She was no passenger, she was co-pilot. Without her, there is no life, merely moments later. It seems we've all forgotten. Yes, we remember bits and pieces, the fiery speeches, the radical debates, the glasses, the poses, the shotgun in the window. We remember the snippets, but we've forgotten. We've forgotten his fear, his exhaustion, his mistakes, his admitting his mistakes, his regrets, his daughters, his shortcomings, his contradictions, his searching for a home. Yes, we've forgotten. We've forgotten that he was murdered by this country, a country that so many of us want to be accepted into now. We've forgotten that he was snuffed out by a country that declared war on him and those like him. We've forgotten, yes, we've forgotten his murderers. I say to you tonight, we cannot claim to love Malcolm while also loving his murderers. We've forgotten that there is blood on the hand of every president before and after him, including the black woman. That the men who spilled his blood in this room still draw blood in Harlem and Newark and Miami and St. Louis and Cleveland and Haiti and Jamaica and Cuba. This country murdered him, and we've forgotten. We've forgotten that he was stolen from us by men who wished him dead and got their wish, and still wish death upon many men. We've forgotten that he was taken not by gods, but by men, mere mortals, who are not invincible, for they still must be defeated by any and all means necessary. And here we sit in the room where he stood 57 years ago. The Malcolm that stood here was not a meek man. He wasn't in love with money and prestige. He wasn't concerned with being liked, with having friends, with how many followers he had. He could never tolerate witnessing the love that we have for the lives of our oppressors, how we pine for their love, how we would kill to be represented in their world, how we praise black faces in white places, how we allow our sisters to be demeaned, our children to be murdered. He was a man of the streets, and we've forgotten as we speak from our ivory towers, from our penthouses. The Malcolm that stood here stood for a black nation that went beyond our borders, that found friends in African fields and Vietnamese jungles. The Malcolm that stood here was the most hated Muslim in America before America learned to hate Muslims. Yet still he stood here a proud lover of Islam with the millions of Muslims of every race and every creed the world over. The Malcolm that stood here evolved. He was born and reborn before our very eyes. And as he grew, he made room for all of us to transform and develop and build new ways of being. And this is my charge to each of us this evening, to remember Malcolm as he was, not as he is marketed. New men must be born, men who are ready to meet this moment head on. There is no going back to normal. The old world is dying and new humans are needed. Men who are unafraid to love themselves and their people, men who face the person in the mirror with joy and pride. New men must be born. Men who refuse to succumb to the numbness, men who use their feeling to inspire action, men who are tired of watching the world burn, tired of watching our schools crumble, tired of watching our families struggle, our communities be sold, our brothers and sisters stolen, and then want to do something about it. New men must be born. Men who can confront their minds and explore their interior worlds. Men who are controlled by pain and tricked by trauma. Men who protect their partners, teach their people, defend our legacies. New men must be born. Men who find power in their joy, who find freedom in an open and healed heart. who find strength in their love, who find fulfillment in study, who find beauty in the struggle, purpose in fighting for the liberation of our people. Malcolm still lives in each and every one of us. He must not die. New men must be born. Long live Malcolm. Long live Betty Shabazz. Long live the Shabazz Center. Long live the revolution. We have a beautiful history, and the one who created the future will establish the world. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all. I want to apologize first and foremost for missing some of the incredible speeches and some of the prayers in the beginning due to travel delays, and also for not being able to match the tenacity with my voice, because I do have a sore throat, but I wasn't going to miss this for anything. And I want to thank Sister Ilyasa for this great honor and reiterate that this center is important to all of us, and we must support it in every way in order to keep the legacy alive in every way. It is always a great honor to stand here, and I want to actually do this prayer a little bit differently. The first prayer I'm actually going to say is Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum means peace be with you all. It was the last thing that Malcolm said when he addressed his people. I want you to think about how significant that is. That the last thing Malcolm gave to this world, the last way that he addressed us was Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you all. And when he says Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you all, he meant all of you. Malcolm loved all of his people, not just black Muslims, but all black people in America, not just all black people in America, but black people all over the world, not just his people, but Malcolm loved and stood for his Japanese brothers and sisters that were shamefully bombed and interned before anybody else would. He stood for them. Malcolm was the first to speak on Vietnam, the most unpopular cause that you could possibly take up. Malcolm went to Palestine. In 1964, he went to Gaza. He spoke up against the occupation and the Israeli aggression and stood for Palestinian liberation when no one else would, and people like Dr. West are still paying the price for daring to speak for the Palestinians. Malcolm dared first to speak for the Palestinians. Malcolm was not ashamed of his love, and Malcolm was not selective with his love, because Malcolm was sincere to that truth. And so a few prayers. The first one that you may have heard in the movie, Al-Fatiha, the opener. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. The most compassionate, the most merciful. Malik Yawmiddin, Master of the Day of Judgment. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, and from you alone we seek help. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those who are beloved to you. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Not those who have earned your wrath, nor those who have gone astray. Ameen. That was the opener for Malcolm. Malcolm believed in one God. Malcolm was a monotheist. Malcolm was a Muslim. Malcolm was also a martyr. I want to speak for a moment about what happened here 57 years ago. He was a martyr. You may know the name, if you are a Christian, John the Baptist. In Islam, we call him Yahya, which means he is given life in the chapter of Mary in the Quran. We believe in her too, and we believe in Jesus, peace be upon him as well. And God names him Yahya, the one who has life, prophesizing his martyrdom, because the martyr does not die. And so I want to talk about what happened here and pray with that for a moment. In this moment, when Malcolm was martyred, إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون. Allah says in the Quran that when those who said they believe in him stood firm, when death approaches them, the angels descend upon them. And at that moment, the martyr sees the paradise they were promised from the very first strike. If you look at Malcolm when he was being assassinated and that beautiful smile on his face, we believe he was seeing paradise. And the angels say, أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا, do not be afraid, nor grieve. And glad tidings for the paradise that you have been promised. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that when someone leaves this world, either they are relieved from the world or the world is relieved from them. Think about how profound that is. Either they are relieved from the world because of the harm, or rather because of the good that they did and all that they did for the people and all that they gave and all the harm they took on for nobility. Or the world is relieved from them because they caused harm to people. Malcolm, in those few years that he lived on this earth, gave everything, and was ready to sacrifice his life. And at his funeral, there was a verse that was recited by Dr. Ahmed Usman, some of you might remember. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ. Do not say of those who have been killed in the way of God that they are dead. Rather, they are ahya, like Yahya, they are alive. بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. Rather, they are alive in their Lord in constant felicity. فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله ويستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. They are constantly receiving the joy that their Lord has promised to them. And they wait anxiously for those who have yet to join them. There is no fear upon them, nor shall they ever grieve again. We believe that Malcolm no longer grieves. We believe that there is no fear upon Malcolm. We believe that Malcolm is still alive. We believe that Malcolm has received the promise of his Lord. The last verses are the verses that I first recited the first time Sister Ilyasa gave me the honor to do so here. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. God says in the final chapter of the Quran, final juz, O soul that is at peace, come back to your Lord, well pleased and well pleasing. Enter you amongst my servants, enter you my paradise. May God enter Malcolm and Betty to the highest level of paradise. May he guide us to that which he guided them to of righteousness. May he allow us to live a life that is pleasing to him. May he connect us to him. May he allow us to embody everything that we praise about our brother tonight. May he allow us to be joined with the righteous in the highest abode of righteousness. May he forgive them and forgive us for all of our shortcomings. Amen.
Freedom fighter, Malcolm X, Uhuru fighter, Malcolm X, freedom fighter.
Thank you.